Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the maintenance shaft of Station Omega-7. The ventilation system had been acting up for weeks, and as the only human technician on this godforsaken outpost, the job fell to him. The alien crew members considered such manual labor beneath them, preferring to delegate the dirty work to the primitive human. The station orbited a dead world in the Kepler sector, serving as a research facility for the Galactic Coalition's Xenobiology Department. Most species avoided this place like a plague ship. The isolation suited the researchers just fine. It meant fewer questions about their work. Marcus had been here for 3 years, fixing everything from broken gravity generators to malfunctioning food synthesizers. The pay was decent, and more importantly, it kept him far away from Earth's overcrowded cities. He had always been a loner, preferring the company of machines to people. As he navigated through the cramped shaft, his tablet beeped with an incoming message. Dr. Vextar, the station's Zarathi chief scientist, needed him in Sub-Level 7 immediately. Marcus frowned. He had never been to Sub-Level 7 before. In fact, he wasn't even sure it existed on the station's schematics. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself standing before a heavy blast door marked with symbols he didn't recognize. Dr. Vextar waited for him, his reptilian features twisted into what might have passed for a smile among his kind. "Ah, Technician Chen," the Zarathi hissed. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We have a rather unique situation that requires your particular skills." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What kind of situation?" "Follow me," Vextar said, pressing his scaled hand against a bioscanner. The massive door groaned open, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch into darkness. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, and Marcus could hear a low humming sound coming from somewhere deep within. They walked for several minutes before reaching another door, this one transparent. Beyond it lay a chamber that took Marcus's breath away. It was enormous, easily the size of a small hangar bay. In the center of the room, suspended by massive energy restraints, was a creature that defied description. At first glance, it looked like something out of ancient Earth mythology, a dragon. But this was no fantasy beast. The creature was easily 40 feet long, covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. Its eyes were closed, but Marcus could see the intelligence behind those massive lids. Powerful limbs ended in claws that could tear through steel, and folded wings suggested it had once soared through alien skies. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Vextar said, his voice filled with scientific fascination. "We discovered it on Draconis Prime before the planet's star went supernova. The locals called it Zephyr Thane, a name that roughly translates to Stormbringer." Marcus stared at the creature in awe. "It's incredible. But what does this have to do with me?" "The containment system has been malfunctioning," Vextar explained. "Our automated repair systems cannot access the primary control matrix without risking the creature's escape. We need someone small enough to navigate the maintenance tunnels and skilled enough to perform delicate repairs." Marcus studied the massive containment apparatus. Energy fields crackled around the dragon, keeping it in a state of forced unconsciousness. Monitoring equipment lined the walls, recording everything from brain activity to cellular regeneration rates. "How long has it been in there?" Marcus asked. "Approximately 15 standard years," Vextar replied casually. "It was quite aggressive when we first brought it aboard. The sedation was necessary for everyone's safety." 15 years. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had spent 3 years on this station and already felt like he was going insane from isolation. He couldn't imagine what 15 years of imprisonment would do to any sentient being. "What exactly are you studying?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "The creature possesses remarkable regenerative abilities," Vextar said, his eyes gleaming with scientific fervor. "Its cells can repair damage that would be fatal to most species. We've been conducting various experiments to understand the biological mechanisms involved. Marcus noticed several monitoring stations around the chamber, each displaying different readings. Heart rate, neural activity, cellular reconstruction rates, all the data you'd expect from a long-term medical study. But there were other readings, too, ones that suggested more invasive procedures. The repair work shouldn't take long, Vextar continued. A few hours at most. The creature will remain sedated throughout the process, so there's no danger. Marcus nodded slowly, though something about this entire situation felt wrong. He had always prided himself on being practical, on focusing on the job rather than getting caught up in moral complications. But looking at this magnificent creature trapped in its energy prison, he felt a growing unease. An hour later, Marcus found himself crawling through the maintenance shafts that surrounded the containment chamber. The tunnels were barely wide enough for a human, which explained why none of the larger alien species could access them. His toolkit was strapped to his back, and a portable scanner showed him the location of the malfunctioning components. The primary control node was located directly above the dragon's head. Marcus had to lie flat on his stomach, working through a narrow grate to access the control circuits. From this vantage point, he could see the creature's face clearly for the first time. Even unconscious, there was something majestic about it. The scales around its eyes formed intricate patterns, almost like ancient writing. Its breathing was slow and deep, disturbed occasionally by what looked like troubled dreams. As Marcus worked, he began to notice irregularities in the containment system. The energy restraints weren't just keeping the dragon unconscious, they were actively suppressing its neural activity. It wasn't sedation, it was a form of technological lobotomy. His hands moved automatically, repairing damaged circuits and replacing burned-out components. But his mind was racing. The more he learned about the system, the more disturbed he became. This wasn't just containment, it was torture. Marcus paused in his work, staring down at the dragon's face. For just a moment he thought he saw its eyes flutter, as if it were trying to wake up. The monitoring equipment showed a brief spike in neural activity before returning to normal. "How's the progress, Technician Chen?" Vexitar's voice crackled through his comm unit. "Almost finished," Marcus replied, though his hands had stopped moving entirely. He stared at the control panel in front of him. All it would take was a few simple adjustments, and the neural suppression field would fail. The dragon would wake up for the first time in 15 years. Marcus thought about his life on the station, about the casual way the alien crew treated him, about the loneliness that had become his constant companion. He thought about the dragon, trapped and alone for far longer than he had been. "Just a few more minutes," he said into his comm. His hands began to move again, but not to complete the repairs. Instead, he began to carefully sabotage the neural suppression system, making it look like a cascade failure that would occur hours after he left. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late to stop. As he worked, Marcus whispered to the unconscious dragon, "I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, I'm going to give you a chance. What you do with it is up to you." He finished his sabotage and began the legitimate repairs, ensuring the containment field would hold long enough for him to get clear of the chamber. As he packed up his tools, Marcus took one last look at the dragon. This time, he was certain he saw its eyes open for just a split second, and in that brief moment, he could have sworn he saw something that looked like gratitude. 3 hours later, Marcus was back in his quarters, trying to act normal as he filed his repair report. The neural suppression field would fail in approximately 4 hours, and he estimated it would take another hour for the sedatives to wear off completely. He had no idea what would happen when the dragon woke up. Maybe it would go on a rampage and destroy the station. Maybe it would simply try to escape. Maybe it would seek revenge against its captors. Marcus Chen had spent his entire life being practical, playing it safe, following the rules. But for the first time in years, he felt like he had done something that actually mattered. Outside his small porthole, the dead world continued its silent orbit. But Marcus had the feeling that very soon, this forgotten corner of the galaxy was going to become very interesting indeed. The countdown to freedom had begun, and there was no turning back. The alarms began screaming at 0347 station time. Marcus Chen bolted upright in his bunk, his heart pounding even though he had been expecting this moment. Through the walls of his quarters, he could hear the panicked voices of the station crew and the heavy footsteps of security personnel running through the corridors. "All personnel to emergency stations," came the announcement over the intercom. "We have a containment breach in Sublevel 7. This is not a drill." Marcus quickly dressed and stepped into the corridor, joining the stream of alien crew members rushing toward their assigned positions. Dr. Vextar ran past him, his reptilian features twisted with panic and fury. "How is this possible?" Vextar was shouting into his communicator. "The containment field was just repaired. Run a full diagnostic on all systems immediately." Marcus kept his expression neutral as he made his way to his emergency station in the engineering section. Around him, crew members of various species chattered nervously in their native languages. Most had never seen the creature in Sublevel 7, but rumors had spread over the years. Everyone knew that something dangerous was kept in the lower levels of the station. In the main engineering bay, Chief Engineer Korthak, a massive bear-like Orsani, was coordinating the station's response. His thick fur was standing on end, a sure sign of stress among his people. "Chen!" Korthak growled when he spotted Marcus. "Get to the security center and help them analyze the containment failure. We need to know how this happened." Marcus nodded and headed for the security center, his stomach churning with nervous anticipation. He had no idea what he would find when he got there, but he was certain it would be unlike anything he had ever seen before. The security center was in chaos when he arrived. Multiple screens showed views from cameras throughout Sublevel 7, but most of them displayed nothing but static or darkness. The few working cameras revealed twisted metal and sparking electronics where the containment chamber had been. Security Chief Grimwald, a thin insectoid sectarian, was frantically trying to coordinate a response team. His compound eyes reflected the flickering emergency lights as he turned to Marcus. "The entire containment apparatus has been destroyed," Grimwald clicked in his species' rapid-fire language. "Whatever was in there is loose somewhere in the lower levels. We've lost contact with 3 security teams already." Marcus studied the camera feeds, trying to piece together what had happened. The containment chamber was completely demolished, as if something had torn it apart from the inside. Massive claw marks scored the walls, and several of the heavy blast doors had been ripped from their mountings. "Any sign of the creature?" Marcus asked, though he could already guess the answer. "Nothing," Grimwald replied. "It's as if it simply vanished. But that's impossible. There's no way out of Sublevel 7 except through the main access corridor, and our sensors would have detected any movement there." Marcus frowned. He had studied the station schematics extensively during his time here, and Grimwald was right. Sublevel 7 was essentially a sealed box, connected to the rest of the station by only a single access route. Unless... "What about the maintenance tunnels?" Marcus asked. "Some of them extend pretty deep into the station's superstructure." Grimwald's antennae twitched nervously. "Those tunnels are too small for anything larger than a human to navigate. The creature we were holding was massive." Marcus nodded, but privately he wondered if they were underestimating their escaped prisoner. Dragons, even mythological ones, were supposed to be intelligent. Maybe this one had found a way to use the maintenance systems that nobody had considered. Over the next few hours, Marcus helped coordinate search teams throughout the station. They found evidence of the dragon's passage in several locations, massive claw marks, twisted metal, and in one case, an entire bulkhead that had been melted through as if by intense heat. But the creature itself remained elusive. It wasn't until Marcus was alone in the lower engineering levels, checking the atmospheric processors, that he finally encountered their escaped prisoner. He was crawling through a particularly narrow maintenance shaft when he felt a vibration in the metal around him. It was rhythmic, almost like breathing. Marcus froze, suddenly aware that he might not be alone in the cramped space. Slowly, he turned around and found himself staring into two enormous eyes that glowed like molten gold in the darkness. The dragon's head completely filled the tunnel behind him, and Marcus realized that the creature had somehow compressed itself to fit into the maintenance system. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Marcus was acutely aware that he was trapped in a metal tube with a creature that could probably incinerate him without effort. But something in those ancient eyes stopped him from panicking. The dragon spoke, and its voice was like distant thunder, transmitted somehow directly into Marcus's mind rather than through his ears. "You," the voice said, filled with recognition. "You are the one who freed me." Marcus swallowed hard. "You remember?" "I remember everything," the dragon replied. "Every moment of those 15 years, every experiment they performed on me, every time they harvested my blood, my scales, pieces of my flesh for their research." The mental voice carried a weight of pain and anger that made Marcus's head ache. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and he meant it. "I didn't know the full extent of what they were doing to you until I saw the containment system." The dragon's massive head tilted slightly, studying him with those intelligent eyes. "You could have simply completed your repairs and left. Why did you risk yourself to help me?" Marcus thought about the question for a moment. Because it was the right thing to do. No sentient being should be treated that way, no matter what species they are. "Sentient being," the dragon repeated thoughtfully. "Most of the creatures on this station consider me nothing more than a laboratory animal." "But you saw something different?" "I saw someone who had been trapped and tortured for 15 years, Marcus replied. "That's enough for me." The dragon was quiet for several minutes, and Marcus could hear the distant sounds of search teams moving through other parts of the station. Eventually, the ancient voice spoke again. "My name is Zephyr Thane, though I suspect you already know that. I am the last of my kind, the sole survivor of a world that died in fire when its star collapsed." "I'm Marcus," he replied. "Marcus Chen, and for what it's worth, I'm glad you survived." "Are you?" Zephyr Thane asked, and there was something almost amused in the mental voice. "Even knowing what I'm capable of, even knowing that I could reduce this entire station to molten slag if I chose to?" Marcus considered this. He had seen the destruction in Sublevel 7, the melted bulkheads and twisted metal. He had no doubt that the dragon could do exactly what it threatened. "Yes," he said finally. "Everyone deserves freedom, regardless of how dangerous they might be." Zephyr Thane made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Marcus Chen. Perhaps both." "Probably both," Marcus agreed. "So what happens now? Are you planning to destroy the station?" "I had considered it," the dragon admitted. "The creatures who imprisoned me certainly deserve no mercy. But then I realized that such action would also kill you, and you have shown me kindness when you had every reason not to." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The lives of everyone on the station hung in the balance, and apparently, his small act of defiance had tipped the scales toward mercy. "There is another reason as well," Zephyr Thane continued. "I have spent 15 years learning about this galaxy, absorbing information from the station's databases during the few moments when the neural suppression field weakened. I have seen how your species is treated by the other races of the Galactic Coalition." "How do you mean?" Marcus asked. "Humans are considered primitive, barely worthy of inclusion in galactic society. You are given the most dangerous and degrading jobs, treated as expendable labor by species that consider themselves your superiors." The dragon's mental voice carried a note of contempt. They see you as I was seen, as something to be used and discarded when no longer useful. Marcus had to admit that the dragon's assessment was accurate. Humanity had been admitted to the Galactic Coalition only 50 years ago, and they had always been treated as junior partners at best. But I have observed something that these other species have not, Zephyr Thane continued. Humans possess qualities that they lack: compassion, the willingness to take risks for moral principles, the ability to see value in beings different from themselves. These are not primitive traits. They are signs of a mature and noble species. Marcus felt a strange pride at the dragon's words, though he wasn't sure he deserved such praise. I have made a decision, Zephyr Thane announced. I will not destroy this station, though its crew deserves destruction. Instead, I will depart this place and carry with me the knowledge I have gained. But first, I have something to offer you. What do you mean? Marcus asked. You freed me from my prison, Marcus Chen. In the ancient traditions of my people, this creates a debt that must be repaid. I offer you a choice. Come with me when I leave this place, or remain here and continue your life as it was. Marcus stared into those golden eyes, trying to process what he was being offered. Come with you? Where would we go? Wherever we choose, the dragon replied. The galaxy is vast, and there are many worlds where a human and a dragon might find purpose. I have access to knowledge and technology that could benefit your entire species if used wisely. The offer was tempting, but Marcus had to ask the obvious question. What about the station crew? If you leave peacefully, won't they just capture you again? Zephyr Thane's mental laugh was like distant thunder. Let them try. I am no longer the weakened, drugged creature they imprisoned 15 years ago. I have had time to heal, to remember my true nature. They will find me considerably more difficult to contain this time. Marcus heard footsteps echoing through the maintenance tunnels around them. The search teams were getting closer, and soon they would be discovered. You must decide quickly, Zephyr Thane said. Will you trust me enough to leave your old life behind? Or will you remain here, safe in the familiar confines of your cage? Marcus realized that the dragon was right. His life on the station was just another kind of prison, only slightly more comfortable than the one Zephyr Thane had escaped. He thought about the years of isolation, the condescending treatment from the alien crew, the endless routine of repairs and maintenance that would never lead to anything meaningful. If I come with you, Marcus said slowly, what exactly would we be doing? Changing the galaxy, Zephyr Thane replied simply. Your species has potential that the other races refuse to see. With my knowledge and your perspective, we could show them what humanity is truly capable of. The footsteps were getting closer now. Marcus could hear voices calling his name, searching for him in the maze of maintenance tunnels. I need to know, Marcus said urgently. Are you planning some kind of revenge against the Coalition? Because I won't be part of anything that involves hurting innocent people. Revenge? Zephyr Thane considered this. No, Marcus Chen. I am beyond revenge. I am interested in something far more profound, justice, and perhaps if we are successful, respect for those who have been denied it. The search team was very close now. Marcus could see flashlight beams probing through the tunnel openings nearby. In moments, they would be discovered, and any chance of escape would be lost. Marcus Chen had always played it safe, had always chosen the path of least resistance. But looking into those ancient, intelligent eyes, he realized that safety was just another word for giving up on the possibility of something better. All right, he whispered. I'll come with you. Zephyr Thane's eyes blazed with approval. Hold on tightly, Marcus Chen, and prepare yourself for a journey unlike anything you have ever imagined. The last thing Marcus saw before the world dissolved around him was the startled face of Security Chief Grimwald appearing at the end of the maintenance tunnel, compound eyes wide with shock at the impossible sight before him. Then reality twisted. Space folded in on itself, and Marcus Chen discovered that dragons knew secrets about the universe that even the advanced species of the Galactic Coalition had never dreamed of. Marcus Chen materialized on a world that defied everything he thought he knew about physics and space travel. One moment he had been in the cramped maintenance tunnel of Station Omega-7, and the next he was standing on crystalline ground beneath an alien sky painted in shades of silver and gold. The transition had been instantaneous and disorienting. His stomach churned as his brain tried to process the impossibility of what had just happened. No known technology could transport matter across interstellar distances without a ship, without jump gates, without any of the massive infrastructure that made galactic travel possible. "Steady yourself," Zephyr Thane's mental voice carried a note of gentle amusement. "The first experience with dragon space can be unsettling for those not born to it." Marcus looked around and saw that the dragon had returned to its full size, no longer compressed to fit through maintenance tunnels. Zephyr Thane stood nearly 50 feet tall, his scales shifting through spectrums of color that didn't exist in human vision. Magnificent wings stretched wide as the ancient creature tested muscles that had been restrained for 15 years. "Dragon space?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "A method of travel that my people developed long before your species discovered fire," Zephyr Thane explained. "We learned to fold space itself, to step between distant points as easily as walking from one room to another. It is not technology in the way your coalition understands it. It is something far older and more fundamental." Marcus stared at the alien landscape around them. Crystalline formations reached toward the sky like frozen lightning, and in the distance, he could see structures that were clearly artificial, but unlike anything built by coalition species. "Where are we?" he asked. "Nexus Prime," Zephyr Thane replied. "The hidden heart of a civilization that the Galactic Coalition believes to be extinct. My people built this place as a refuge, a sanctuary where knowledge could be preserved even if our physical forms were destroyed." As they walked through the Crystal Garden, Marcus began to see signs of life. Beings moved among the formations, some humanoid, others completely alien, but all possessing an aura of ancient wisdom that made him feel like a child in the presence of elders. "Your people aren't extinct?" Marcus asked, struggling to understand. "Our bodies died when Draconis Prime was consumed by stellar fire," Zephyr Thane said sadly. "But consciousness, properly prepared and preserved, can transcend physical death. What you see here are the stored minds of my entire species, maintaining this sanctuary until physical forms can be found for them again." They approached a massive structure that seemed to be grown rather than built, its organic curves flowing seamlessly into the crystal landscape. As they drew closer, Marcus realized that the building was somehow alive, its surfaces pulsing gently with bioluminescent patterns. "For centuries we have watched the younger races of the galaxy," Zephyr Thane continued. "We have seen them rise and fall, make the same mistakes repeatedly, learn slowly and with great cost. Most show promise for a time, but eventually succumb to arrogance, aggression, or stagnation." They entered the structure through an opening that dilated like an iris to admit them. Inside, the walls were lined with what looked like crystalline memory cores, each one glowing with soft inner light. "But humanity," Zephyr Thane's mental voice carried a note of excitement. "Humanity is different. In your brief time among the stars, you have shown qualities that we had begun to think were extinct in the galaxy. True empathy, moral courage, the willingness to sacrifice for others even when there is no benefit to yourselves." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the implications of what he was hearing. "You've been testing us?" "Not testing," Zephyr corrected. Observing. The incident on Station Omega-7 was not planned, but it provided perfect opportunity to see how a human would respond when faced with another being's suffering. They emerged into a vast chamber filled with floating displays showing scenes from across the galaxy. Marcus could see coalition worlds, human colonies, alien civilizations he had never heard of. It was like looking at the entire galaxy from the perspective of gods. Your choice to free me, despite the personal risk and despite having no knowledge of what I might do with that freedom, confirmed what we had hoped about your species, Zephyr said. Humans possess something that has been lost among the older races, the ability to act based on moral principle rather than calculated advantage. Marcus studied the displays around him, seeing images of human colonies where his people worked alongside alien species, often in the most dangerous and difficult conditions. He saw human scientists sharing their research freely, human soldiers protecting civilian populations regardless of species, human aid workers bringing relief to disaster-stricken worlds. The coalition treats humanity as junior partners because they see your technological limitations and assume this reflects intellectual or cultural inferiority, Zephyr explained. They fail to understand that technological advancement and wisdom are not the same thing. One of the displays showed Station Omega-7, where security teams were still searching frantically for any sign of their escaped prisoner. Dr. Vextar stood in the ruined containment chamber, his reptilian features twisted with frustration and rage. "What happens to them?" Marcus asked, feeling a strange mix of anger and pity for his former colleagues. "Nothing," Zephyr replied. "They will report the incident to coalition authorities, who will conclude that the containment failure was caused by equipment malfunction. No one will believe that a primitive human technician could have sabotaged such advanced systems. They will rebuild their facility and continue their work, never understanding how close they came to disaster." Marcus felt relieved, though he couldn't entirely explain why. These beings had tortured Zephyr for 15 years, treating him like a laboratory animal. They deserved punishment for their crimes. "Vengeance is a luxury I cannot afford," Zephyr said, reading his thoughts. "What we are planning requires a different approach entirely." "What exactly are we planning?" Marcus asked. Zephyr gestured toward the displays, and the images shifted to show human colonies throughout the galaxy. But these were not the struggling outposts Marcus was familiar with. These showed thriving worlds where humans worked alongside technologies that seemed almost magical in their sophistication. "We are going to change the balance of power in the galaxy," Zephyr said, "not through conquest or destruction, but through elevation. My people's knowledge, combined with human wisdom and moral courage, will create something unprecedented, a truly benevolent galactic civilization." Marcus stared at the impossible visions surrounding him. "You're talking about uplifting the entire human species?" "Not uplifting," Zephyr corrected. "Empowering. Humans already possess the qualities necessary for galactic leadership. They simply lack the tools to demonstrate this to species that judge worth based on technological capability alone." The dragon led him to another chamber where dozens of the crystalline memory cores were arranged in a complex pattern. Each one contained the stored consciousness of a dragon, waiting for the chance to contribute to this grand plan. "My people made a mistake," Zephyr admitted. "We became so focused on preserving knowledge and maintaining our technological superiority that we lost touch with the very qualities that made civilization worth preserving. We became observers rather than participants, catalogers rather than creators. But humanity still possesses these qualities in abundance," another voice said, and Marcus turned to see a shimmering figure materializing beside them. It was clearly draconic in basic form, but translucent, made of light rather than flesh. "This is Kirith Vel," Zephyr said by way of introduction. She was our greatest philosopher before the destruction of our world. Kirithavel studied Marcus with eyes that held the weight of millennia. Your species fascinates us, young human. You have been part of galactic civilization for barely 50 of your years, yet you have already begun to change it in subtle but profound ways. Marcus felt uncomfortable under such scrutiny. I'm just a technician. I fix things when they break. Exactly, Kirithavel said with obvious approval. You see problems and work to solve them, regardless of whether it benefits you personally. Most species, once they achieve technological sophistication, lose this instinct. They become focused on maintaining their position rather than improving conditions for all. More crystalline figures began to materialize around them, dozens of ancient dragons sharing their thoughts and perspectives on the plan that was being proposed. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the sheer age and accumulated wisdom surrounding him. The plan is simple in concept, Zephyr explained. We will share our technology and knowledge with humanity, but selectively and gradually. Human colonies will begin developing capabilities that seem to emerge naturally from human ingenuity and research. Within a century, another dragon added, human worlds will be demonstrating capabilities that rival or exceed those of the oldest coalition species. But this advancement will be coupled with the moral framework that makes humans unique, their instinct to use power to protect rather than dominate. Marcus began to understand the scope of what they were proposing. You're talking about a complete transformation of galactic politics. More than politics, Zephyr said. A transformation of galactic civilization itself. For the first time in millions of years, the galaxy will have a dominant species that is motivated by compassion rather than conquest. The implications were staggering. Marcus thought about the coalition as it existed now, a collection of species held together by mutual benefit and carefully maintained power balances. Most member species tolerated each other rather than genuinely cooperating, and conflicts were common. But what about free will? Marcus asked. You're talking about manipulating the entire course of human development. Don't we have the right to choose our own path? Kirithavel's luminous form flickered with what might have been amusement. Wise question. This is exactly the kind of ethical consideration that proves our assessment of your species is correct. We will offer guidance and tools, Zephyr said. How humanity chooses to use them will be entirely up to your species. We will not force advancement or dictate policy. We will simply ensure that humans have the capabilities necessary to achieve their own moral vision for the galaxy. Marcus considered this carefully. Throughout human history, technological advancement had often been driven by military necessity or economic competition. The idea of receiving advanced technology from benevolent aliens seemed almost too good to be true. What's the catch? He asked suspiciously. What do you get out of this arrangement? Redemption, Zephyr replied simply. My people failed in our duty as guardians of galactic civilization. We allowed the galaxy to stagnate, permitted lesser species to dominate through aggression rather than wisdom. This is our chance to correct that failure. And companionship, Kirithavel added. We have been alone for so long, watching from the shadows as civilizations rise and fall. Working alongside humanity will allow us to engage with the galaxy again, to be participants rather than mere observers. Marcus looked around at the assembled dragons, seeing hope and determination in their ancient eyes. These beings had survived the destruction of their world, preserved their consciousness for centuries, and waited for the right moment to re-emerge. And they had chosen humanity as their partners in reshaping galactic civilization. What would my role be in all this? Marcus asked. You would be our liaison with humanity, Zephyr explained. The bridge between our species, helping to ensure that our gifts are used wisely and that human values are preserved throughout the transformation process. The prospect was both thrilling and terrifying. Marcus had spent his entire adult life fixing broken machines on remote stations. The idea of playing a role in the elevation of his entire species seemed impossible. "I'm not qualified for something like this," he protested. "You need diplomats, scientists, leaders. You are exactly what we need," Carathavel interrupted. "You possess the qualities that make humans special: humility, empathy, the ability to see beyond your own interests. Leaders and scientists can be corrupted by power or ambition, but someone who fixes things because they are broken, who helps others because it is right, such a person can be trusted with the future of the galaxy." Marcus felt the weight of their expectations settling on his shoulders. Around him, the ancient dragons waited for his decision, their crystalline forms pulsing with patient hope. He thought about Station Omega 7, about the casual cruelty he had witnessed there. He thought about the way humans were treated throughout Coalition space, as useful but primitive beings, valuable for their labor, but not their insights. But he also thought about human colonies he had visited, places where his people had built something beautiful despite having access to only limited resources. He thought about human values, the instinct to help others, the willingness to sacrifice for moral principles, the dream of building something better for future generations. Maybe the dragons were right. Maybe humanity did possess qualities that could transform galactic civilization. And maybe, just maybe, a simple technician who had learned to see past species differences could help make that transformation possible. "All right," Marcus said finally. "I'm in. Let's change the galaxy." The assembled dragons erupted in harmonious tones that resonated through the crystal chambers, a sound of pure joy that seemed to celebrate not just his decision, but the beginning of a new age for the galaxy itself. And in that moment, Marcus Chen realized that fixing broken things, whether machines, containment systems, or entire civilizations, was exactly what he had always been meant to do.